Hey everyone, I am back with Mike Ness and we're here to show you how to do cool translucent effects in Amos. Say hi, Mike.
Hello everybody.
Okay, so this is a project I did a while back. It's not only a shmup I'd like to make someday, but it is also just something to show off some pretty cool effects. There's the explosion. When the explosions happen, the screen fades to red with some palette changes, but there are no more enemies, so you won't see it anymore. But then there's also those little spiral effects that I just put there to show the translucent tinting effect modes that are possible. And if you look carefully at the exhaust coming out of the back of this robot character I'm controlling, you can actually see some of the detail of the background through the flame. So I'm going to just go through a lot of different demos and show you the graphics and code in Amos and show exactly how I did this stuff. And this will be available for download if you go to bitbeamcannon.com, and then there's a little tab or section called something like Classic Systems, and then you can choose Amiga. This shows how you need to set up your palette, and what I recommend in general is breaking it up into ranges of 4 colors, and it can be from light to dark or dark to light, so long as each set of 4 is in the same direction. Because if you have some gradients that are from light to dark and others are from dark to light, it's going to look like it's also like a photo negative, which could be cool. You might want to do that on purpose for some effects. At any rate, in general, if you're just going for a standard kind of translucent color tinting effect, then just break up your palette into 4 color groups from light to dark or dark to light. And there is other settings that you could use if you want smoother gradients but less of them. So you can do 8 color ranges. Obviously, you're not going to be able to have as many different color ranges that way, but it definitely is an option. And in this demo, it explains the different set bob command settings in order to have it work properly. So that's the first step. Carefully arrange your palette for your game. So I'll press a key to get to the next one. So this screen explains how there are 2 different general modes. So the first mode that I call full here, that you could see with the little graphic near the top right corner, is if you draw your bob very specifically with the first color index of any of the ranges, and you use the set bob command with that %sign 11111100, any of those colors, when it blits onto the screen, everything it's covering, background graphics and other bobs, everywhere there's that solid color, it's going to tint but keep all of the shading. It's just going to remap on the fly everything that's under that particular color to be tinted that particular color. So instead of just opaque covering everything with that color, it just tints it that color. So it's an extremely convincing translucency effect. And of course, if, let's say you want a very glowing bluish or orange effect for like some kind of beam, or even though you should, unless you want a negative effect, keep it going from light to dark, you can brighten it all and make the darks a lot less bright and lower the contrast of your color range so it seems more opaque. So it doesn't have to keep the same exact values. It all depends on how you make the palette. It could really look like you're looking through something that's kind of foggy, if that makes sense. Yeah. The artist has a lot of control on how this effect is going to look just by tweaking what the colors in the 4 indexes of that range look like. And then the second version, what's interesting, you could see there's that difference of at the end, the last 3 digits are 101. And what that does is you lose some of the detail fidelity, but now you can use the light and the dark. Basically, the midtones disappear, but you keep the lightest and the darkest. And that's really useful if you want an effect that's still somewhat transparent, but it has more detail in it.
Okay.
So what that could mean is, like, for that little shmup with the flying robot, that exhaust back there, it was 2 color. It had the really light stuff where it's hottest, and then the darker red. And they were still semi-transparent and showed some detail of the background through. But if you look carefully, it's missing the midtones. So it's a payoff. You're losing some of the detail, a dark and light version of each color. That's really handy for stuff like fire effects or beams or things like that. And here you finally see the actual different bobs in action. The two main ones to look at are the ones that keep going around the edges of the screen. One of them being the full translucency setting that keeps all of the value fidelity, so to speak. It doesn't lose the medium values, the medium tones. And it's currently about to be in the bottom left corner. So there's that one. And then the other one on the opposite side, basically, is the different set bob option where you use the lightest and the darkest of each color range. And you can see that's one bob in each case. Those are one bob with all those translucent colors going on. And as far as Amos is concerned, you're just controlling an otherwise normal bob, but you get all those nice translucencies. And the other really cool thing, you could see there's that big bob that says not transparent there that's putting use to the full 32 color palette. And when those translucent bobs go over it, it doesn't just affect the background. Obviously, as people that are really used to Amiga programming know, a bob or blitter object is considered background graphics. So you can layer the translucent effects. You can layer an opaque regular bob in between a bunch of transparent or translucent bobs, and all the effects are perfectly maintained. So it's extremely... if you set up your palette like this and you use set bob properly, you can get a translucent effects that are in some ways more powerful than the Super Nintendo. Because as far as I know, in the Super Nintendo, you can set up a layer that has a transparent effect, but any sprite you draw in that layer, or maybe it even supports tiles as well, but basically anything you draw in there, that whole layer gets drawn first as though everything is opaque, like a regular bob, and then the whole layer has the effect on it. So you can't sort of stack one translucent thing on top of another and get an end result that reflects the fact that two things have been done. I know that's a little complicated, but hopefully that makes sense. So, yeah. And then you could obviously... Go ahead. Sorry, Mike.
Does the blit order matter here?
Yeah, it would in some cases, obviously. If you blit the opaque, the one that says not transparent under it,
yeah.
If that is the highest up in Z order, meaning the last thing that's drawn down onto the screen, then it's obviously going to cover the quote-unquote translucent bobs. But it makes perfect visual, rational sense. You get the exact result you expect based on that stacking order. So, and obviously, if you have one completely translucent setting bob that's, like, let's say it tints everything red, and then you put another one on top of it, there's going to be no visual effect where they both overlap because they're both doing the exact same thing. So it's not going to, like, double up on it and make it, like, 50% more opaque or anything like that. But otherwise, it's... you know, like if you've tinted something blue and that tints the whole background blue, and then it overlaps a circular bob that tints things red, where it overlaps the stuff that had been tinted blue is going to keep all its detail but now be tinted red. Like, it won't blend colors and make a purple, but you can do tricks to do stuff like that, which I'll be showing in one of the other demos we're about to show. So this is these set bob settings. This is using 32 color mode, and it works. These set bob settings seem to work fine for 32 color mode or 16 color mode, or in fact, I think the graphics mode here for this demo was 64 half bright, and the settings seem to work fine in all the settings. But then there's also, here is a graphic that's also in 32 color mode, but broken up into 8 color ranges. And you'll be able to see in the code itself that it's different set bob commands to give you the same exact results with your 8 color ranges. So you could see the dots that are on the upper left right now. You keep absolute color fidelity or value fidelity. You're not losing any detail as it goes over the gray image, and it tints at those colors. And because of the way I made the color ranges, they're all pretty much the same value. In other words, the darks in each color range are about as dark as each other, as are the lights. So it really is like you're putting a piece of like, back in the olden days, we used to call it cellophane, or like colored transparent plastic, like the 3D glasses or something like that, the red and the blue. It's tinting it, but it's not really changing its contrast or its lightness or darkness. But obviously, if you make one of the color ranges, like let's say you want something to really look like a fiery explosion or something like that, or just like a very bright laser beam, you can make it so that the entire color range never gets as dark and is really bright and vibrant and lower contrast. And that's going to make, when you use a set bob command with those colors in it, and you put the bob on the screen, it's not only going to tint it, it's going to look like it's more opaque and more bright and glowing. Similarly, you can use this very same trick, and I'll actually show this. I'll hold off on that and show you during the Amos intro that we developed together, that Amos installer intro, because you can use the same trick. So let's say you had an 8 color range, and I'm sure there's a setting for 16 colors at a time to sort of remap the first 16 colors to the second set instead of 4 or 8, which you've seen so far. So you could have a whole range of colors in your 8 or 16 color range. And then by pushing it to the second set, if you make the second set of 16 colors or 8 colors look just like the first set but darker or brighter, then you're creating the equivalent of like a half bright mode or a brightening mode, which the Sega Mega Drive had as well. So it doesn't have to be just tinting it other color ranges. You could make a whole range of colors in your first set of colors, and then a copy of it that's been lightened or darkened or anything like that. So
Sure.
you really can get creative with it. Another thing that you could do is, let's say we doubled up. So look at the palette on the bottom of the screen there. There's no mouse pointer in this Amos demo. I hid the mouse pointer, which I now regret. But look down at that palette there, and picture in that gray range, let's pick any two of the grays that are near each other. And let's say the two color indexes, we make the exact same looking color, right?
Yeah.
So, and then we draw our graphics with it, but we hide information. So let's say you're making a mystery game where you can shine like a black light in the game to reveal some secret text that someone wrote with a black light pen or something like that, right?
Oh, cool, yeah.
So that's another way you could use this exact same method. So picture one of those round circular bobs being drawn to simulate a flashlight that brightens everything. But not only would it brighten everything, it would also turn that equivalent to that duplicate color in the first range of colors. It's now got its own unique color value. So when the flashlight that you could move around, the bob that you could move around on the screen representing where you're aiming the blue light flashlight, it would reveal where you hid stuff with that duplicate color index. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so you could do really cool stuff. It's just, it's worth a lot of experimenting with the palette arrangement and there's a huge variety of set bob commands. These are the ones that are going to be most useful, the ones that in all of these demos you're going to be able to download from bitbeamcannon.com in the Classic Systems / Amiga section. So definitely go to bitbeamcannon.com and give these a look. You will not have permission to reuse my graphics, but you could totally reuse the code for whatever you want to do or just to learn from. So Mike Ness here was nice enough to make a much above my pay grade and very concise technical rundown of how the different set bob commands work. So if you'd like to quickly give us an overview of what this all means, Mike, that would be awesome.
Yeah, sure. So this screen basically just shows the different values for the colors. Color 8 would be in binary 1000, and color 16 would be 10000. So these are the color indexes and how the Amiga would calculate which color index to use based on the bit planes that are set up.
Right.
Is basically the bit planes are sort of like little layers. They're kind of layered on top of each other, and to find the index that a certain pixel uses, you have to go and look sideways, if you will, at the bit value that's set in those bit planes.
Right.
So
in other words, when you add a bit plane, you're basically bumping up. So if there's I guess a 1 setting, or yes, the bit plane is turned on at this pixel location. If the pixel was also turned on in the previous bit plane, then it's going to jump up that color to the color index that is represented by that bit plane. Does that make sense? It jumps it up. Yeah. So if I think the other thing I wanted to point out, keep in mind, everyone, that programmers use 0 as the first color index. So if you could think about it, color 8 is the 9th color, or another way to look at it, it's the first. If you're breaking up your palette into 8 color ranges, then color 8 would be the first color of the second set of 8.
Right.
And so on and so forth. So color 15 would be the 16th color index, right? And then color 16 would be the first color index of the second 16 color set. So that's the thing to keep in mind when you're looking at these numbers here.
Right.
Okay.
So when Amos does the blit for a bob, it uses the formula that's listed there, whereas I have it written: the final color is calculated by D for destination equals A and B, which is the source bit plane and the destination bit plane. And then you OR it with a mask of the bob. A mask is essentially another bit plane that's used to sort of create transparent values around an object. So like if you have a character, you're not blitting over the background where the character is not positioned. You're just splitting the actual character itself.
Right. So basically the mask is like the data that says, okay, this pixel in this location for this bit plane is on or not, is being displayed or not. Or in other words, is transparent or opaque.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then this bottom section here just has me doing some of the math based on different set bob values. Like for instance, the first set bob value here is 111100. This essentially turns on bit planes 6, 5, 4, and 3, but leaves the second and the first bit planes off.
Right. So where is that on this text file? Sorry, I couldn't find.
Sorry.
No problem.
See where it says plane number, and then it has 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1?
Yep.
And then to the right of that, it says set bob.
Yep.
So, and then it has another set bob with a different value.
Gotcha.
That I used to calculate the second values.
So you were talking about here?
Yep.
Okay. So set bob 111100.
Yep.
And then this is the effects of that set bob command.
Correct. Okay. So what this is doing is over on the left side, it says if the background color is color number 7, index number 7, then the bit value would have to be set in the first, second, third bit planes. They'd all have to be set to 1.
Gotcha.
So then I can take these binary values of the color indexes,
right,
of both the bob being blit and also the background, and I'll AND them together and then I'll OR it with the set bob value.
Right.
And I'll end up getting a resulting color.
Which is color index 15.
15. So what this is showing is that this set bob value will bump color 7 up to value number 15.
Right. So remember, everyone, 7 would be the first of the second set of 8. That's one way to look at it. A color index, and then it would be bumped up an entire 8 indexes to the. So it starts out as the color being displayed is color index 7, which is the end of the first range of 8, and it gets bumped up to the end of the second range of 8.
Correct.
Okay.
And I've done that for all the colors, as you can see.
Right.
And that first set bob value does exactly that for all of the colors. It bumps them all up to the next range.
Which is, it looks like always a difference of 8 color indexes. So it bumps it up 8 color indexes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, the interesting part on the second set bob is the way the math works out on those is they don't always bump up to the corresponding value in the next section, the next gradient.
And this yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say this looks like the second mode that I accidentally discovered when trying to find this one. This was the setting that gives you the perfect. You lose no value in there. It keeps the light to dark range is perfectly intact. It just bumps everything up but keeps all of the sort of value fidelity, so to speak. But this mode, the nice thing is if you draw your bob with the first color of the range and the last color of the range, it will give you a translucent effect for both the lightest and the darkest. And you can see here in the math, this is why you lose the midtone.
Right.
So, okay. Please continue.
Exactly.
Sorry about that. Yep.
Nope. That's essentially it. That shows why you lose the midtones based on that set bob command. Mm-hmm. This is the logic behind it that's causing it to just bump up. Colors number 5 and 4 both will turn into color 13 when it's split with this set bob value.
Okay. Well, very cool. It's cool to see how the actual math works, and especially for me, I'm so not I'm not a real programmer and never got into, like, I have no idea how OR works in math, but sure. I just literally kept randomly trying different set bob combinations of zeros and ones until I finally got the effect I was after, which took a really long time. But the nice thing about doing it that way is I accidentally found other modes that I would not have even thought to look for had I not just randomly stumbled upon them trying all these variations. And the nice thing is, everyone watching, you get to benefit from my blind stumbling around all those many hours, all those many years ago to find those different settings. And I'm sure there are other cool settings. More math-friendly people than me, I'm sure, can figure out other cool uses for set bob in a more methodical and scientific way, knowing where you're going before you kind of stumble upon it. And now let's quickly go back to the side-scrolling shmup. And again, everyone, you're going to be able to download this code from bitbeamcannon.com to actually look at it. Why isn't my controller working? Oh, the arrow keys work. What buttons work for? Oh, there we go. Okay, so you could see that grayish kind of spirally bob there that I'm chasing around the screen. Right. That was another accidental setting I found in set bob that comes extremely close to a perfect brightening effect, almost like half bright but in reverse, where it's bumping up, for the most part, each color index to the next color index of the range But the cool thing is it's not bumping into the new color range. So in other words, this is broken up, this game's palette. It's a 16 color game, and it is broken up into 4 color gradients. And the cool thing is anything in the background graphics that use the last color of any of the gradients, it doesn't get bumped into the first color of the next gradient, which would obviously ruin the effect. Suddenly something that should have become a slightly lighter blue, for example, would suddenly be yellow or something ridiculous.
Yes.
But that doesn't happen, and seeing the math in that sort of chart that Mike Ness made really shows. It's kind of weird. I'm talking somewhat to you, Mike, but I'm also referring to you by your full name for the viewers. But I hope that didn't confuse anybody. But so yeah, it's a really cool effect. It's definitely it's imperfect, but it's worth sharing with you because obviously the extent to which it's imperfect is not noticeable on moving objects and in a moving game. So it does lose a couple of values, just like what we talked about with that other setting. And I don't even know exactly what index is, but you could experiment with it and see for yourself. But in general, if you copy what I did here with the set bob command and using the particular color index that I put in the bob, and you could try others, obviously, it definitely should experiment to see what you can get. That's just another really cool additional effect we could add to the game to give things a fairly minor glow or kind of like a smoky or steamy effect. Like if I animated some steam type little bobs and made them coming out of like a chimney or something like that, it would make a really cool effect. And again, it's just a sort of accidental offshoot of experimenting with the different possible variations of the set bob command. So let's see if we can find which one that is really quickly here. So I'm going to do the search. I forgot what the keys are. So search new, set bob. Okay. And then what's the next one? Search Amiga F, apparently. Amiga F. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Oh, it's step forward and back that I wanted. Did you see what the key was?
It's Amiga N for next.
Amiga N, okay. Let's see. So which one is it? Is it 20? Let's just really quickly comment that out and see if it became solid. Yep, it's solid now. So it is Bob 20. And so if you have a 16 color palette game, there's a good chance it'll work in 32 color mode. It's worth trying. But divided into 4 color ranges or 4 color gradients, then this particular set bob command is going to give you that effect that is in this game brightening, but that's because of the way the palette is arranged. So let's take a look at the actual palette. Let's see, what am I looking for? Config? No, user. There it is. Let's see if we could see the palette. Okay, so you can see the palette is arranged from dark to light in each gradient. So if you designed your game palette from light to dark for each color range, then the effect would be a slight darkening instead of a slight lightening. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. So I forgot to turn back on the effect. And the other cool thing that I may have mentioned previously in the video, but just to be safe, I'll say it again. You can use these different set bob commands in conjunction with each other, which is another way this is actually more powerful than the Super Nintendo's Mode 7 transparent or translucent tricks. Like the downside, obviously, compared the weakness of this stuff compared to the Super Nintendo Mode 7 stuff, the Super Nintendo is actually computing and displaying entirely new colors. It's not shifting which color indexes it's using. It's actually putting more new colors on screen. So you end up with hundreds of new colors on the eventual displayed screen, Whereas, if you're running this game in 64 half bright or 32 color mode or whatever, you're not getting actually more colors on screen. You're just shifting which one it's using. But the nice thing, the trade-off of that is you can use different translucency modes all at the same time. So, for example, if you have a 32 color index game and you use the 4-color gradient setup in the first 16 colors and make most of your game use those 16 colors, you can use these set bob commands to get these 3 different translucency modes. But then you could also use other set bob commands to jump from the first 16 colors to the second set of 16 colors, which you could make all drastically different or brighter, or create a super subtle fog effect or a photo negative by inverting light to dark. If it were dark to light in the first set and you reverse all the gradients to be light to dark, you'd get like a photo negative effect. There's all kinds of cool stuff. And you could use all those different types of set bob all at once in the same game on the same screen, which can really let you do some really cool things. All right, so the last demo that I wanted to show you, that again you can download from bitbeamcannon.com. This was Mike had been working on a new, I think, hard drive installer for Amos.
Yes.
And I worked on a nice little intro, something nice to look at while it's loading up. And this is what I came up with. And then we're going to analyze it and show you what's going on. So I actually happened to find a professional voice actor. I don't know if that got picked up on the microphone, but a voice just said, "Amos Professional, unleash your creativity." And so I just happened to find a voice actor. I liked his voice. And then I found out, I contacted him to see if he was available to record that little bit of that voice sample for the intro. And I just told him what it was for, and it just so happened he had an Amiga as a child, so he even gave me a discount on the voice cool. Acting. So yeah, that was really cool. But anyway, so to get back on point here, we're using 2 very different set bob commands for the 2 different translucency effects that are going on. So on the left, you have a very different way to get the same effect, which is the brightening effect, which again, if we inverted the way the palette was arranged from light to dark to light, or vice versa, you would get a darkening effect instead of a lightening effect. So that crosshair type thing that's going up and down, that could be a darkening effect instead of a brightening if you switch how your palette is arranged. But anyway, and then the other thing you see is the actual semi-transparent drop shadow, which looks a lot like half bright mode. So let's actually break this now so that we can look at how the palette is arranged. So users, edit objects. So if you see here, this is really tricky. So the set bob command for the crosshair that goes up and down, what it's doing somehow is bumping the color. It's based on 2 colors at like 2 color ranges, and it's just taking this any color index and moving it to. So I guess it's the would this be odd or even, since we're starting at 0? That always blows my mind. So this one here, this
0 is even.
Okay, yeah, that's true. That's why. Okay, so all the odd ones. Yeah, so starting with this one here, it's going to be brought back 1 index to what is, because of the way the palette is arranged, lighter. So this one here, you could see the way the palette is arranged. This is a brighter version of this color. This is a brighter version of this color, and so on and so forth, at least for these first 8 colors, right? So that's the tricky part. So I'm basically using only these first 8 colors, and even fewer than that, in the actual sort of background graphics. The little player character, the little guy in the jetpack, that's a sprite, so I don't have to worry. Like, that can't get affected by any set bob stuff, and bobs can't go on top of him. But for the background stuff, these are the colors that I'm using, these darker ones in the range. So I'm using this one, I'm using this one, I'm using this one, and maybe that one in the background. I don't think I do. And this one. And then, so that brightening effect, whatever the set bob is, and again, you'll be able to download this and take a look, and I'll show you quickly in a moment. We'll figure out what the actual set bob setting is. But so that's the way we're getting the brightening effect. But then we take that entire 8-color chunk there and we bump everything 8 indexes ahead, so that if it were this color, it would be, let's see, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So then this, yeah, so this is the next set of 8 actually, right? So you could see that this color, you know, like these are the equivalent, a darker version. The one thing that gets confusing is the red. That red is a color I reserved for using the copper on to change the colors, for like to get the gradients and the words Amos professional and all that stuff. But in order to do that, I just had to make sure I did not use the equivalent color, which is this one in the background. Right. Because if I did, it would get bumped up to this color, which would have the copper gradations in it, which we don't want. It would ruin the effect of the drop shadow, right? You don't want parts of your drop shadow to be a vibrant gradient from Amos Professional. Right. But otherwise, that's how it's working. The colors that were relevant that I used in the background, in order to get the drop shadow, I made sure they were in the same exact position in the next set of 8 and just looked like a darker version of that color. But then obviously any color in here that I don't use in the background, I don't need to worry what color its equivalent is. So I could use it for a new color, because it'll never, none of the background will ever get turned into any of these super vibrant colors with the drop shadow, because they can only be bumped to exactly 8 color indexes further in the palette, right?
Makes sense. Yeah. I see that.
So I just avoided certain colors I didn't use here, so that I could, it freed them up to use for other stuff, basically.
Cool.
Yeah, so then we could look for set bob again. So it's Amiga F set bob. Okay. All right, so here are our different set bob commands. I'm going to guess this is the translucent, the brightening crosshair thing. Just because it's got such a strange set bob of just 1.
Right.
And I'm going to guess that's why it's only moving it. It's shifting it 1 color index over. Oh, look, that's weird. Oh, I see. That was for creative. That's a whole other thing I forgot to mention. I use an incredibly similar trick to the transparency trick in the Daemon Claw demo, which you can also download, to get that simulated back playfield. So you could see now, because I turned off set bob, you could see the supposed back layer is actually being drawn on top of the foreground, but because of its set bob command, it's being displayed only through the transparent color 0 of the foreground.
Right.
So I forget about that.
It's just like the mountains in Daemon Claw.
Exactly. And then so, okay. Oh, okay. So yeah, you could see set bob 14, though. It's using the same exact set bob mode. Oops. Oh, that's a comma. That's not a... let's see. Where's that? Why can't I find the key now? There we go. Yep, so now you can see the brightening bob is now opaque.
Right.
So you could see, if you want to use that mode where it's just shifting it over in sets of 2 to the, like basically -1, but stuck in ranges of 2, that's the set bob command. It's just set bob parentheses 1. And then I guess I should use tab, shouldn't I? Yep, okay. So that is it. And then there's both of these are the same, so we know those are the drop shadows for Amos and Professional. So if we turn those off, suddenly the Amos Professional drop shadows will be solid gray.
Nice.
So those are all the tricks that I've figured out how to use, and you can download all of these that you think might be useful for your projects, everyone, and just copy the way the palettes are arranged in general in groups of light to dark or that sort of thing, and have a blast with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
No, thank you, Mike, very much. Thank you, other Mike. But yeah, that's I'm very happy to share these techniques and these demos with everyone, and I'm really excited to see what other people can do with it. And it just goes to show you, like even with a basic programming language on classic Amigas, just some of the cool stuff you can do pretty effortlessly if once you know what you're doing and how to sort of bang the hardware, as they say. So yeah, very. I was very, very excited when my brother, who was into programming back when we were in our early to mid-teens, theorized that this was possible, and then years later, I got a hold of. I had gotten Amos Pro. I'm flipping through the really intimidating back section for a non-programmer that really gets into some much more sophisticated stuff. And I discovered the setbob command, and I thought, wow, this sounds exactly like what my brother was describing, like setting which bit planes you're drawing. So I started experimenting all those bajillion years ago. And that first demo I started showing in this video, or hopefully it was the first one, the one that I added the wizard drawing to, that's in grayscale with the 8 color ranges. I made that originally decades ago while I was figuring out how to do it, and but anyway, it's just great to brush the dust off and add these other effects and these other demos to really hopefully inspire and empower other people to put use to this really cool effect that sadly was used. It was used quite a lot. I've seen this translucency effect, different versions of it, in a lot of fantastic Amiga demos from the demo scene, but almost never in actual video games. There are a few exceptions, but very rarely. And it's a shame. Like, I hope that it becomes much more common in modern classic Amiga game projects. But anyway, I'll stop rambling about that and just sign off. Thanks again very much for helping put sense to this stuff, Mike, and for keeping the video more lively. And thanks everyone for watching.
If you enjoy our content and want to keep up to date on our games, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, if you want to support our projects, consider becoming a patron. The link's in the description, and we'll see you soon.